Well, hello and welcome back. Today we have Stacia as Aashna on with us, and she is a hypnotherapist, and she really wants to demystify hypnosis for us because it's really a tool that each of us can use every day. I was just talking to her, and I said about the clucking like a duck. That's really not what hypnotherapy is about. And it's a tool that we can use in so many ways in our lives. It's not just about breaking habits or whatever. It's in many different areas. So welcome, Stacia, and thank you so much for being on the summit to discuss this.
Thank you for inviting me, Christina. I'm happy to be able to talk and share. This is so much of my passion, so it's fun to be able to share it.
Yeah, this is one of your favorite things, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So as you said, I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm also a life coach, and I've been doing this work for the last about 3 years, and working prior to that mostly in the work of like wellness and doing some wellness coaching and yoga teaching and meditation as well. So this is my passion. I love doing it.
Awesome. So what people often, why did you get interested in hypnosis? How do people get interested in hypnosis?
Sure. It's really different for each individual. Honestly, to be frank, the reason I got interested in hypnosis was because I needed to address my own trauma. And I started practicing self-hypnosis when I was a teenager. I was basically trying to cope with many years from my childhood and my teen years of trauma. And during my teen years, I was really drawn naturally to meditation and Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. And I'd spend a lot of time out in nature, and I was really I didn't want to take the route of medication to deal with my depression, because that was what was going on. Is as a result of all the trauma and the trauma from all these years, I just became really depressed, and I was suicidal. And for some reason, the route of medication didn't resonate with me. It works for a lot of people, but for some reason, my path was just being guided to something else. So I first started experimenting with yoga, and then that kind of opened me up to reading really more serious books about yoga, and then I got interested in meditation. Through that, I started reading more books about meditation and learned that a lot of meditators would actually use self-hypnosis to induce deeper states of meditation. And that was really interesting to me. I just started looking up self-hypnosis techniques and practicing them and incorporating them into my meditation practice. And I found that the shift that I experienced was enough to prove to me that this is working. All of a sudden, the depression really made I had a pretty drastic shift at about age 18 when I got really serious about practicing these things. I'd gotten to a point where I was just I'm not going to live my life this anymore, and I got my life this way anymore, just in a complete depressed state. So I got really serious about practicing meditation, using self-hypnosis, doing yoga, reading books about mindfulness, and my life just got so much better, and it continues to get better and better. All of a sudden, things in my world that would normally affect me in an adverse way, I suddenly had more control over my mind and emotions, and more of a time, more time to process and get to have more conscious choice in how I was going to deal with these things. And a lot of the things that used to bother me just didn't bother me anymore. And it was just a really it was such a beautiful transformation for me that I just continued to go deeper and deeper into my practices. And I started reading more books about hypnosis, and I found people like Dr. Brian Weiss, who he teaches past life regression mostly. He's a psychiatrist, but his work was so it was so amazing, and I became really inspired reading his books, and people like Dr. Stephen Walensky, who also talks a lot about hypnosis and the trance state. And I got to the point in my mid-20s where I was like, I've had such a powerful experience using these tools in my own life. I would love to be able to facilitate this for other people. And so that's when I decided to go ahead and pursue my degree in clinical hypnotherapy. And it's just been awesome since then. It's wonderful to be able to facilitate these kinds of experiences for people and watch them, really make positive changes in their lives.
Yeah, powerful. It sounds like you're really tapping into your inner wisdom through the hypnosis, kind of. When you can become more conscious of yourself, it helps us to kind of, get more clear on what our truth is. And that's
absolutely
helped you through the depression. And I know so many people who don't want to take the medication. They don't want to medicate it because, it's so tricky medicating depression.
it is.
There's so many different types of medications and how they react with your body. I mean, it can be years before you find a proper medication, even if you can find one that works. So yeah, hooray for you for listening to your inner wisdom in the first place. It's so young, and knowing that that's not the route that you wanted to take.
Thank you.
Impressive. But I bet when you tell people that you're a hypnotherapist, that there's all kinds of ideas they have about what hypnotherapy is. I mean, most of us have seen the almost like a magician show where they bring people on stage and make them do crazy things. And
yep. Yeah, as you said in the beginning, it's like a lot of people just correlate it with either that or mind control. That I get a lot. Or people just look at me blankly, like they don't know what hypnosis is. They're like, what even is that? And it's totally understandable. There's really, it's not so talked about in the mainstream. Once you dive into psychology, though, start studying psychology, you'll realize a lot of very famous psychologists who we learn from use hypnosis, and really talked a lot about the benefits of hypnosis. And it's not that weird of a thing. And stage hypnosis is definitely it's gotten so much attention because it's so interesting to be able to it's fun and interesting. It's very dramatic. And some people really enjoy practicing that. It's not so much my thing, but yeah, it's one aspect of hypnosis, and people can definitely use it and have fun with it. I'm more into using hypnosis as a means of really helping people to heal, to develop more confidence, to understand themselves on a deeper level, and really just to awaken, as you said, to their inner wisdom and to their authentic true self.
And I love that you mentioned mindfulness, because I find that hypnosis, maybe it's just like one avenue to getting really mindful about the actions we're doing and the whys we're doing. And then it gives you that additional boost of how to kind of change that cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a very practical tool for helping you to become more conscious, awake, mindful. And that's really the place you want to be, because the more we get to that we come closer to that place in our life, the more rich and beautiful our lives become, because we are being more true and authentic to who we really are. And it's such a beautiful experience to have.
Yeah. And there's so many studies done on mindfulness. I'm sure that there's a ton of studies done on hypnosis by now. Yeah, go ahead.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I've been practicing meditation and mindfulness for such a long time. I can say that they really go hand in hand. It's just another wonderful tool to use.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk a little bit more about hypnosis, because just on a practical level, what is it? The word hypnos it comes from the Greek language. It's actually, hypnos was the Greek god of sleep. And so hypnosis is really a state, it's kind of the state in between sleeping and waking. And, but it's defined as an altered state of consciousness. And as an altered state of consciousness, there's a couple different types of altered states of consciousness. There's a doctor named Dr. Alan Chips, and he kind of outlines two different types of altered states of consciousness. There's usual altered states of consciousness, like a state of hypnosis, and usual altered states of consciousness are just states that we're constantly going in and out of. That could be like driving your car, or watching TV, or experiencing a really strong emotion. These are actually a form of hypnosis. You're just going into an altered state of consciousness. And another person who I love, Dr. Stephen Walensky, who I mentioned earlier, he talks about the same theory, but he calls them trance states. And he talks about how we're just constantly going in and out of different trances. And the reason that this is important information to know is if you can learn to become more conscious and aware of your own tendency to go in and out of altered states of consciousness or trances, you can start to realize like the kind of disempowered trances or like regressed trances that you go into they're not conscious states. They're like reactive states, and it's usually like learned behavior that's not really true and authentic to who you are. An example would be like if you grew up in a household where you had parents who were very strong authority figures, but like too strong. They didn't give you any level of freedom, and they were always like exerting this power onto you, and you always felt disempowered. You probably learned a certain behavioral reaction to that, where you might like become small, and it was just a means of kind of coping with that sort of figure in your life. And as a result, you may grow up to become an adult who models the same behavior with other authority figures in your life. So you find yourself in like jobs where you may attract people who are authority figures, and rather than, you could go from being like, your conscious, confident, true self, to when you're in that person's presence, again, you become small, and that is a regressed childhood trance. You're not like being present, you're actually going into a trance, you're having this reaction, or a usual altered state of consciousness. It's just it's a very interesting thing to look at, and the more mindful you can become of that, you can notice like, oh wow, what just happened there? I'm not like I was so confident and centered in myself, and then all of a sudden I went into this behavior that is not really me. Where did that even come from? And when we learn to identify those things, then we can really start to change them. We can choose something else. We can learn behavior that is more true to who we really are. And that's when you really start to notice the big shifts in your life. But just learning to identify those states is so empowering. And then the other altered state of consciousness would be applied altered states of consciousness, and those are that's like hypnosis. It's an altered state of consciousness that you go into with an intention to have a certain type of experience or reaction. So hypnosis, or even like prayer or meditation, these are actually also forms of hypnosis. You are going into an altered state of consciousness, but with an intention. And that would be the kind of work that I do with people, is applied altered states of consciousness.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love how you talk about that trance. I mean, I think for an everyday example, that's not necessarily regressive, but like, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been driving, and then all of a sudden I'm like, how did I get here?
Exactly. Yeah. I think about that too. That happens to me all the time. And that's like a very benign trance. Like that's one that, that's something that we all do. And that's okay. The ones that we really want to be concerned about are the ones where we have really strong emotional reactions, we become really disempowered, and it's something that really deeply affects our life in an adverse way.
Right.
You know, we don't need to live that way, and you can become more mindful and in control of those states, and you can change all of it.
Yeah.
And the awareness is really the first place to start. But it is like you're going into a form of hypnosis. You're like, when you have some kind of really like strong emotional reaction that is not true to who you are like in some way hypnotized. And you can, when you start to become aware of it, you'll start to notice it in the world around you too. You're like, wow, you can watch people like who are like, you can watch them going into these states, and you're like, oh, that's what they're doing. And it's very interesting to observe it. It's just a reaction. It's part of the experience of becoming aware, as you just start to notice it more and more. And it's, I mean, I don't say it in a judgmental way. It's really something that we all do. It's just how we're conditioned.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I find myself, I fall right into a trance every time I go back to my mom's home, right? I become that child again. And
Totally.
we fall into those roles, which is fine with my mom, you know, as long as that works. And I have to know, I have to be conscious of not being that child with the same type of authority figure, because sometimes I can, like you were describing it perfectly, how we can suddenly become disempowered in a situation if we're not
totally
conscious of it, you know, conscious of our triggers and all of the stuff that's going on, all the pieces that are going on. And it's and it's normal for every human being to do these things. I love that hypnosis is just a way that we can really tune into them and then find, you know, ways that are more authentic to us. So is there ways that we could practice some of these things ourselves?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many. So self-hypnosis is something that everybody can do. And it's really not that complex. There are a lot of different things you can do. One of the things that we don't even recognize as self-hypnosis, but it is a form of self-hypnosis, is repeating affirmations. And it's like one of the best tools out there. I love using affirmations. One thing that I can offer is I don't know if you're familiar with rebirthing. There's a wonderful teacher from rebirthing, and rebirthing is a type of breath work. And Sandra Ray, who's one of the teachers from rebirthing, she outlines some ideas about how our psyche is conditioned, and she talks about the idea that we all have an inner personal lie, and the personal lie is like the deepest, darkest belief that you have about yourself. And usually the belief that people have is something like, I don't matter, I'm not worthy, there's something wrong with me. Yeah. So
we call those core wounds.
What do you call them?
Core wound.
Oh yeah, core wound. That's a good one. Yeah, probably the same thing. So if you can identify what that is, what is the most like dark belief that you have about yourself? And again, no shame, no judgment. It's really okay to have these thoughts. It's hard. I mean, it's really hard not to when you live in a world where like you have so much feedback coming to you that is negative and not true. You know, telling you like and reaffirming you're not okay. You're not perfect. You're not worthy. It's like you need all these other things in order to be this.
Yeah, and we're human, so we have an ego, and our ego
Totally.
is always at battle with us, trying to, you know, perfect us or, you know, do whatever it needs to do to be seen and grow big, you know. So I think it's one of those parts that we have to remember are our limitations as humans, is that we're always going to try to perfect things or control things or.
Absolutely. But those kinds of beliefs that what did you call it? Your core wound or your personal lie. Those are, when you have that kind of belief, and you have an inner dialogue that supports it, and you're constantly reinforcing it to yourself, usually unconsciously, sometimes consciously. Sometimes you'll actually hear people talk really poorly about themselves. I mean, often I guess people do. You are, in a way, hypnotizing yourself to really believe that. And all of a sudden, your life becomes an expression of it. It's really it's really not a good thing to do to yourself. So the first affirmation that you can choose to create would be the opposite of that. Identify whatever that core wound is, and then create an affirmation that is the opposite of it. So if it is that I am not worthy, then your affirmation can become I am worthy. And you would use that affirmation every day and just repeat it. You can repeat it out loud. You can use it as like an inner mantra that you repeat over and over again. You can write it on a piece of paper and stick it on your wall, put it on like a Post-it note, and stick that in your car. Just make it as visible as possible, so it's always kind of streaming into your consciousness and your awareness, even if it's like something that you see out of the corner of your eye, as long as it's like getting in there. And even if you don't believe it at first, you can actually like hypnotize yourself to believe that that's true. All of a sudden that becomes your reality. Your life becomes an expression of that belief. And it works. I say it works because I've experienced it. I use affirmations all the time. I use it with clients, and I have tons of friends who use affirmations, and probably a lot of people, if they're drawn to this summit, they're probably well aware of affirmations. But for anybody who's already using them, just to reiterate, yes, affirmations are awesome. They're a form of self-hypnosis. You can use them to really change your beliefs about yourself.
Yeah, and so it's just bringing your focus back to what you really want to hear, instead of telling yourself. I mean, some of us have stories as old as we are, that have reinforced these core wounds, or the lie. What was it? The
personal lie.
Personal lie. Yeah. So we have been working on these stories. We have come up with evidence to prove these stories true. Every
Absolutely.
something that happens, we're like, oh, that's because I'm not worthy, or that's because I don't deserve
Yep.
whatever. And so we've built these up for so long. So it's not like we get an affirmation and tomorrow it's okay, but it starts bringing our focus back.
Totally.
Whatever we focus on is where our target is. So if we want to focus on bad stuff, that's where we're going to end up, wherever that stuff is. And we want to focus on what we really want is, to be successful. Then we need to know that we're worthy. And so we're just, training our brain to come back to the thought that serves us more.
Totally. And, really it's always just about awareness.
Yeah.
And when you were saying that, I had a thought, and just to go off of what you just said, if you have these sorts of negative beliefs about yourself, like, yes, it does take time for you to really start to believe it, and for your life to become more of a reflection of it. Sometimes what will happen is you'll start to draw things to you, but you still don't really like positive things to you, but you still don't really believe it. And so you'll sabotage them because you'll unconsciously sabotage it to keep it away from you, because you don't really believe that you're worthy of goodness. And just if you like having a mindfulness practice, if it's journaling or meditating, something that just keeps you like just in a state of mindfulness, you'll start to notice your own patterns and how you do these things. And it might take a little bit of time. Sometimes people notice a really dramatic shift, though. It's really different from person to person, but they can really work. And I say that through personal experience and what I've observed.
Yeah, because we look for opportunities then to prove. When we focus on those affirmations, what happens for me is I start looking for opportunities to prove that affirmation true instead of that old story. So I'm no longer looking for, evidence of that old story. I'm only looking for evidence of this new story. And then you start seeing it, it's just like whatever you go looking for in the world, you're going to find it.
Absolutely. And once you start to see the evidence that like this is working, that helps your belief to become like really ingrained that, okay, this does work. Once you start noticing like, oh man, my life is improving, then you're like, wow, that affirmation stuff does really work. And then you start to, and then it just becomes more and more easy to believe, whatever the affirmation is, when you start to notice the proof that your life is changing. It's becoming more aligned with that new belief, that new affirmation that you've created.
Awesome. And so, any other techniques? Anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, I would love to give a little bit of a guided hypnosis. It's really, I'm going to teach you a self-hypnosis technique that you can use. So I'm going to give you the technique, and then you can afterwards I'll reiterate the steps so you can write. Whoever's listening can write them down if they'd like, and then they can use it themselves. Cool. So self-hypnosis, it doesn't go quite as deep as like an applied hypnosis session where you're with a facilitator, but or with a hypnotherapist. But you can definitely like really experience some awesome experience through it. If it's, whatever the goal is. If you usually people use it for relaxation, or like I said, to deepen state of hypnosis, maybe to get some clarity in your life on something. So the first thing that's important when you're doing self-hypnosis is to usually you want to do it when you're sitting upright, because unless you've been meditating laying down and you are like not susceptible to falling asleep, you can lay down if that's the case, but otherwise you probably want to sit up and just make sure that your spine is nice and straight, and that you feel really comfortable, because you're going to be sitting here and you want to just be able to feel really nice and relaxed. Okay, so if you're at home and you're listening to this, go ahead and close your eyes now that you're in a nice, comfortable, seated position. And just start to notice your breathing. Allow it to become nice and deep and rhythmic. And the first step is that you're just going to imagine yourself in a really beautiful outside place in nature, a place that's really special and beautiful for you. It might be at your favorite park, or at a beach, or on a mountaintop. Go wherever you want to go, somewhere that feels really relaxing and good for you. Go ahead and really engage your senses here. So engage your sense of hearing. Notice the different sounds around you, the smells. If there's any sense of taste. What do you feel? If you're sitting down, you're standing, maybe there's a breeze, or maybe you're feeling the warmth of the sun. Just really make this very engaged experience. And now start to notice and feel a beautiful energy just pour over your body. I'm going to pour from the top of your head down to your toes. It feels so relaxing. Maybe this energy has a color. Make it really beautiful and vibrant. Notice how good this feels to be in this special, beautiful place, feeling this beautiful energy just pouring over you. Notice how relaxed you feel. And you can even repeat that inwardly to yourself, that I am so relaxed. I'm so relaxed. This feels so good. Maybe you have an affirmation that you want to repeat inwardly to yourself here. Something that feels beautiful and loving and supportive. And the energy is still flowing. And as the energy is flowing, you notice any tension that might be left in your body is just washing away. It's okay to let it go. And maybe now you might want to notice that this energy becomes a beautiful ball of light surrounding you. And in this ball of light, you have the ability to access your inner wisdom. If you have any questions or if you need any clarity on anything, now is the time to inwardly ask for clarity and just be open to receiving whatever it is that you need here. Take your time. And now you're just going to begin to come back into a more awakened state of consciousness. On the count of 1, 2, and 3, you're going to wake up and open your eyes, feel wide awake, much more relaxed. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel like fluid. Like I feel like very
Cool.
that is. But yeah, no, it's really nice. And what a way to really tap into our inner wisdom, because if we can get quiet and get to that point where we're more relaxed, we can, the inner wisdom is the part that thinks without all those triggers going on all over the place, the sadness and the anger and all of it, even the joy can sometimes get in our way.
Absolutely.
Something.
Yeah, your inner wisdom is, to me, it's really just a state of awareness. Like it's a state of complete, absolute awareness. Mm-hmm. And it is a place that you can tap into. And that exercise is something that, it's actually really easy. And it's something that people can do at home. I want to just go over the steps in case anybody wants to write them down. But the important steps to remember are just that you want to have a really supportive position for your body, whether it's laying down or sitting up. Make sure your spine is nice and straight. And then you're going to do the imagery work, so visualizing a place that feels really harmonious and supportive for you. Mm-hmm. And then the progressive relaxation. So through the progressive relaxation, I had you visualize the energy pouring over you and going through your body. And you can go through that more thoroughly, and you can say, I feel my head relaxing, I feel my neck relaxing, whatever makes sense for you. And you can make this your own. And then we use deepening words. So the words relax, you can actually repeat these things inwardly to yourself. And then we did clearing. So then you're going to just clear any stress or tension from your body. From there, you don't have to do the bubble visualization. That's something that I do as an option to help ask for guidance. Like I said, sometimes people really like that. I really enjoy that part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you awaken yourself. So it's actually that's a self-hypnosis technique that you can use anytime. And you can also record it. You could put it on a recording and listen to it yourself. There's lots of great audios out there as well that you can listen to that are really helpful. A lot of people I know will even just use their phones and record a really short self-hypnosis session, and then they just listen to it. All these are great ideas.
Yeah, or you could listen to this one again. I mean, feel free to rewind. Anytime.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was a perfect technique that just kind of helps you, become more aware and more present to where you are right now. And I think that that's a huge part of awareness, is just becoming present to the moment and, really sticking out what the truth is versus what all the stories we're really making up in our head.
Totally. And, self-hypnosis is really, applied hypnosis. The intention often is people want to gain healing in some way in their life. And when you're under a state of hypnosis, your subconscious is much easier to access. And your subconscious is really where you store a lot of the repressed memories and behaviors that you've learned. So when you're in a state of hypnosis or self-hypnosis, you can actually really, sometimes things will just start like surfacing, like you'll have an awareness or a realization like, oh, that's where that came from. So when you did the bubble technique and you asked for clarity or guidance, you could ask for that stuff, and your subconscious mind is actually much easier to access in that state. So if you're looking for guidance, if you want clarity, if you want to really understand yourself on a deeper level, or understand like, why is it that this is happening in my life? It's a great way to get there.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. And so below you can ask Stacia anything about hypnosis or her life coaching that she does as well. Any questions, any comments you want to talk about, how this technique worked for you, or, what your experience was. We'd like to hear it all. We really
absolutely
connect with you. So thank you again for being on the summit. I really greatly appreciate it. This is a great technique to kind of tap into our inner wisdom.
Thank you. Yeah.
A fantastic explanation of really hypnosis, so that we don't think we're going to be clucking like a duck. Unless I do tomorrow, I'll report back.
Okay. Yeah. I think you'll be safe. But if people really want that, then they can have that too. It's out there.
Ooh, you could put that in there. You really wanted to.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks guys for tuning in. And again, put your comments below, and connect with Stacia through any of her links below as well. So
thank you so much, Christina.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.